Think about the last character animation you made in Blender. It was near perfect, and no, there was nothing wrong with the animation itself. It just lacked something really useful to make an animation come to life. What is that, you might think? It is secondary motion. Secondary motion is the difference between a stiff animation and an animation that feel alive. It helps brings life to your animation, adding jiggle to parts where jiggles are needed, making your animation look really professional. With that said, let's bring your animation to life. For this tutorial, I'm going to start with something everyone already has access to. Suzanne, Blender's default monkey. The goal is simple. I want her ears to react naturally whenever the head moves. Instead of staying perfectly stiff, they'll have a bit of secondary motion that makes the animation feel much more alive. Once you understand the principle behind this setup, you can use it on almost anything that needs secondary motion. Hair, ears, tails, soft body parts. The best part is that Blender takes care of the motion for you, saving you from animating dozens of extra keyframes by hand. To begin, we need to add an armature to make positioning the bones easier. I'll enable face nearest snapping. This lets the bones stay attached to the surface of Suzanne while I place them, instead of floating around in space. I'll create one main bone running through the head, then extrude another bone for one ear. Using Alt plus P, I'll separate that bone from its parent and move it into position. Sometimes snapping could affect how you move your bones around. You can turn it off and then on when you want precision. I'll repeat the same process for the other ear. I'll also add a bone to the nose. Once all the bones are in place, I'll select them, then the head bone last and press Ctrl plus P, keep offset. Now, it's time to create the controllers that will actually drive the effect. For each bone that needs secondary motion, I'm going to add a single vertex. If you don't see the single vert option, you'll first need to enable the extra mesh objects add-on from Blender's extensions. Before we continue, there's one small thing worth mentioning. If you have the animation transform offset add-on enabled, temporarily disable it. It overrides one of the shortcuts we're about to use. Now, I'll select one of the bones and press Shift plus S cursor to select it. This places the 3D cursor exactly where I need the controller to be. I know, that's quite a bit of jumping between Edit mode, Object mode, and the Shift plus S menu. That is why I made an add-on to solve this pain, because there will be a lot of mode switching between bones and our controller just to change the point of origin. Since Blender only let that happen in Object mode, I created an add-on called Quick Origin just to solve this headache. It gives you the access to change the origin of any object without leaving the edit mode. You can get this for free from Gumroad using the link in the video description. Do not forget to throw a couple bucks in the tip jar if it saves you time. Now it's time to repeat this process for the remaining bones that need secondary motion. To make things easier to see, I'll hide Suzanne for a moment and focus on the armature. Just like before, I'll add a single vertex, switch back to object mode, shift select the armature and enter edit mode. From here, I'll snap the 3D cursor to the base of the ear bone. By pressing Shift plus Alt plus Q, I can instantly switch my selection from the armature to the vertex object without manually selecting it in the viewport. With the vertex selected, I'll snap it to the cursor, extrude it slightly, then use Shift plus Alt plus Q again to jump back to the armature. I'll select the tip of the bone, snap the cursor there, switch back to the vertex one last time, and snap the extruded end into position. And just like that, the controller is perfectly aligned with the bone. Using this shortcut saves a surprising amount of time, since it eliminates all the repetitive object switching and manual snapping. If you don't have the add-on, you can still do everything manually. It'll just take a little longer, rather than making you sit through the same steps one more time. I'll fast forward this part. Just repeat what we did for the remaining bones, and if you need more time, feel free to pause the video here and catch up. With everything in place, it's a good idea to rename the objects before things start getting messy. I'll name the bones right ear, left ear, and nose, then do the same for their controllers, so it's much easier to tell them apart later. Now comes the part that actually makes everything jiggle. Select one of the controllers, we'll start with the ear, and add a soft body physics modifier to it. Think of these controllers as tiny springs. They're what Blender will simulate, and that motion will eventually be transferred back to the bones. For this setup, I'll use a friction value of 5, a mass of 0.1, and a speed of 0.8. The next step is telling Blender which end of the controller should stay fixed and which end is allowed to move. With the controller selected, go into Edit mode, head over to Object Data Properties, and create two vertex groups. Name the first one Pin and the second one Goal. Select the bottom vertex, give it a weight of 1, and assign it to the Pin group. Then select the top vertex, set its weight to 1, and assign it to the Goal group. This is the end that's free to react and create the secondary motion. Repeat the same setup for the other ear. The nose controller works exactly the same way. The only difference is that I'll name the second vertex group Tip instead of Goal, just to make it easier to identify. For the soft body settings, nothing changes here either. I'll keep the friction at 5, the mass at 0.1, and then set the control point to the tip vertex group we just created. Now it's time to connect everything together. Head into Pose mode, select one of the ear bones, and under the Bone Constraints tab, add a copy location constraint. For the target, choose the corresponding ear controller we created earlier, then set the vertex group to pin. This tells Blender to lock the base of the bone to the anchored end of the controller. Repeat the same process for the other ear and the nose. Remember, you only need to do this for the bones that require secondary motion. Now we need to tell Blender which end should stay attached to the head and which end is allowed to swing freely. To achieve that, we'll create a control point. With the controller selected, head over to the Object Data properties and edit the Go Vertex group and change its name to Top Pin. Or you can just select it without changing its name. It doesn't break anything. I wanted to use that Go Vertex group to pin the bottom vertex to its original position, but discovered Control Point does exactly what I wanted. Then, back in the soft body settings, set Tip as the Control Point Vertex group. You can come back here to play around with the friction and mass until you get the right settings. Now, the base of the controller stays firmly attached to the head, while the tip is free to swing, bounce, and create the secondary motion we're after. Once you've done that, repeat the same setup for the other ear. Now for the moment of truth. Let's move the playhead back to the very first frame and press play to start the simulation. At this point, if I move the armature, you'd expect everything to start jiggling, but nothing happens. Turns out we are missing one last and very small step. Select all of the controllers, Shift-select the armature, switch to pose mode, select the head bone, then press Ctrl+P and choose bone. What we've done here is parented the controllers to the head bone, so they'll follow the character's overall movement while still being free to simulate their own secondary motion. If we look closely at the result, you'll notice something isn't quite right. The controllers are behaving exactly as they should. The base stays pinned while the tip swings freely, but the bones aren't following that movement properly. Fortunately, the fix is really simple. Select the armature, switch to pose mode, and select any of the bones with secondary motion. Then head over to the Bone Constraints tab and add a Stretch to Constraint. Select the corresponding controller and the select tip in the vertex group. You may need to tweak the original length value a little until everything lines up nicely. This allows each bone to stretch and follow its controller. You might want to repeat this process on the other bones so they follow their corresponding controllers perfectly. Now let's play the animation one more time. And there it is. The bones now follow the controllers perfectly, with the base staying firmly attached while the tip naturally stretches and reacts to the motion. The result is a much cleaner and more believable secondary motion. Now that you've got a basic understanding of how this setup works, let's take it one step further. What if the part you want to animate isn't controlled by a single bone, but by an entire chain of bones, like hair, a tail, or even a rope? The process is very similar, but there are a few important differences you'll need to know. For this example, I've downloaded a character from Mixamo, and I want to add secondary motion to her hair. To make the armature easier to see, I'll enable in front under the armature's object data properties. Then I'll extrude 3 bones from the head to create a simple hair chain. You can always add more later, but I'd recommend starting with 3 until you're comfortable with the workflow. Now, we need to create a controller just like we did before. I'll press Shift+A and add a single vert. Blender automatically places us into edit mode, and if you can't immediately see the vertex, don't worry. There's no need to go hunting for it. Just tab back into object mode, shift-select the armature and enter edit mode. Select the base of the first hair bone, press Shift+S cursor to select it, and if you installed the shortcut add-on from earlier, simply press Shift+Alt+Q to jump straight to the vertex object. Now, all you have to do is snap the vertex to the cursor by pressing Shift+S, selection to cursor. Now we have the vert in the 3D cursor. Press Shift-Alt-Q to switch the active selection to the armature. Select the tip of the bone, and with Shift+S cursor to select it. Switch back to the controller, using Shift-Alt-Q, extrude it slightly to create the controller, then snap the other end to the tip of the hair bone. And there we have it, our controller is perfectly aligned and ready for the next step. The next step is to prepare our controllers for the simulation. Just like before, head over to Object Data Properties and create 2 vertex groups. Name the first one Pin and the second one Tip. Assign the base vertex to the Pin group, then assign the tip of the controller to the Tip group. Since every hair bone needs its own controller, I'll simply duplicate this one twice with Shift+D instead of creating everything from scratch again. Now we just need to position each controller on its corresponding bone. Now select the controller and select the armature. Then head to edit mode. Using the Shift+Alt+Q shortcut from earlier, switch to the controller and snap the base of the controller to the base of the bone. Then using Shift-Alt-Q, I will switch to the armature, press Shift+S, cursor to select it, and then switch to the controller and snap the tip of the controller to the tip of the bone. Once you've done it once, just repeat the same process for the remaining controllers. Now, you may have noticed something a little strange. Every time I switch between edit mode and pose mode, the armature shifts slightly. That's because edit mode always shows the armature in its rest pose. while pose mode displays the current animation. To keep both modes perfectly aligned, I'll jump into pose mode, press A to select all the bones, offset all keyframes, then press Alt plus R to clear the rotations and Alt plus G to clear the locations. Finally, I'll press I to insert a keyframe. Now, whenever I switch between modes, the armature stays exactly where I expect it to. With that sorted, I'll hide the character so we can focus only on the rig. Now we need each controller to follow the armature as it moves. The trick here is that each controller should be parented to the bone directly before it. So I'll select the first controller, Shift select the armature, switch to pose mode, select the preceding bone, then press Ctrl plus P, bone. Now I'll repeat the exact same process for the remaining controllers. Each controller gets parented to the bone immediately before it in the chain. The next step is connecting each bone to its controller. Select the bone, head over to the Bone Constraints tab, and add a damped track constraint for the target. Choose the matching controller, then set the vertex group to tip. Unlike the previous setup, we're interested in following the moving end of the controller rather than the pinned end. That's what allows the entire chain to naturally rotate toward the simulated motion. Repeat the same setup for the remaining bones. There's one final adjustment before we test everything. Right now, each controller's origin is sitting way off from where we actually need it. We'll fix that by moving the origin to the base of each controller. In edit mode, select the base vertex and use Shift plus Alt plus X, origin to selected. You can simply hover over the next controller and press Alt plus Q to jump straight into its edit mode. Repeat the process for the remaining controllers, and now every controller is properly aligned and ready for the simulation. Now for the final step, the one that actually brings everything to life. Select one of the controllers and add a soft body physics modifier. For this setup, I'll use a friction value of 5 and a mass of 0.13. Next, expand the goal section and set the vertex group to pin. This tells Blender which part of the controller should stay anchored while the rest is free to react. Then reduce the stiffness to 0.1 and increase the damping to 6. These values help create a smoother, more natural secondary motion instead of something that feels overly springy. Finally, under the strength settings, set the default value to 1, then raise the minimum value close to 1. I'll use 0.955, reduce the simulation speed, and increase the pull and push values under edges. Now, rather than repeating this setup for every controller, Blender has a much faster way. Select the remaining controllers, Shift select the one that already has the soft body settings, then press Ctrl plus L and choose Copy Modifiers. Just like that, every controller inherits the exact same physics settings in a single click. And now, let's press play. Immediately, you can see the hair beginning to react naturally to the movement, giving us smooth secondary motion without animating a single extra keyframe. To finish things off, I'll quickly weight paint the hair so the mesh follows the rig properly. And there we have it, a fully working setup that adds believable secondary motion using nothing but Blender's built-in tools. If you want to fine-tune the motion, try experimenting with the stiffness and damping values. A few small adjustments can completely change how the secondary motion feels, so don't be afraid to play around with them until you get the look you're after. One last thing, don't forget to disable the controller objects in the outliner before rendering, otherwise they'll show up in your final animation. Now that you understand the workflow, I'd encourage you to experiment with it. Try it on hair, ears, tails, clothing, accessories, or other parts. The more you use it, the more natural it'll become. I'm also working on a one-click add-on that automates this entire setup. During the beta testing phase, it'll be completely free, and I'd love to have some of you test it out and give feedback. At the time this video is being published, the add-on isn't available just yet, but as soon as the beta goes live, you'll find the download link in the video description. If you'd like to be one of the first to try it, make sure to join my Discord using the link below. That's where I'll announce the beta and share the download when it's ready. If you found this tutorial helpful, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe for more Blender tutorials like this. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.